You're back with more Matt Patrick.
KTRH News Time is 7:15, and I'm very pleased to have with us Congressman Michael Burgess, Texas Congressman Michael Burgess, in studio. Always good to have the Congressman in studio. He and I have talked on the phone for years, but never have had a chance to meet face-to-face. He's autographed his new book for me, Doctor in the House. Congressman, welcome to Houston's Morning News in Houston. Good to have you.
Well, Matt, I'm just so pleased to be here. How are you all this morning?
We're doing great. Let's talk a little bit about 2 years ago. Obamacare gets signed into law by the president, passed out of the Senate. I remember this on Christmas Eve, ruined my Christmas. Why did it take so long for it to get signed into law? He had the president to twist some arms in the House in your department to get this thing through.
Yeah, remember that the Senate passed a bill that was completely different from what the House had passed the previous November. This was back in 2009. The Senate bill number was 3590. That actually was a housing bill. It did start in the House because Harry Reid was smart enough to recognize that this bill is basically a tax bill. Tax bills have to originate in the House of Representatives. He didn't want to pass the House-passed health care bill because it had some things he didn't like, so he created his own product, and that was taking 3590, a housing bill, taking the housing language out, putting health care language in, and you remember what that looked like. That was Ben Nelson with the Cornhusker kickback, Mary Landrieu with the Louisiana Purchase.
Right.
American people were so distressed by that activity that when this thing passed out of the Senate on Christmas Eve, well, they always thought they'd come back to the House and kind of knock off the rough edges, but they didn't get a chance to do that. Scott Brown won the special Senate election in Massachusetts. Harry Reid lost his 60-vote lock on the Senate, and he told Nancy Pelosi, I've done all I can do. It's up to you. So Nancy Pelosi and the president then had to sell this dog over on the House side, and it took them till March 21st to get it passed in the House. The bad news was that since the House had already passed it and the Senate now passed it after an amendment that turned it into a health care law or health care bill, when it comes back to the House, it just needs 218, just 218 concurring with the Senate amendment to H.R. 3590, and boom, the thing goes right to the White House, does not go through a conference, nothing else happens. Nothing else can happen to it. Right. You can't change the Senate language in any way. That's why this thing's so bad. It was never intended for prime time.
Yeah, and as a doctor, you certainly know how bad it is, and it's discussed in the Congressman's book, which is a great read here this morning, and he's autographed one for me. Thank you very much. All right, 2 years ago, I remember this thing getting signed into law. All of us are horrified. Now it's in front of the Supreme Court. Let me ask you this question. If the individual mandate is found to be unconstitutional, Dr. Burgess, what does that do for the insurance companies? I would believe that this is the worst thing that could happen to insurance companies if the individual mandate is kicked out.
It would be, and it would require some very rapid legislative remedies, and I pray that we are ready to do that, both the House and the Senate, because it would take the House and the Senate acting together. But if you void the individual mandate without taking out community rating and guaranteed issue, suddenly the whole country becomes New Jersey. And I mean that in the best sense of the word. But insurance is very expensive in New Jersey because that's what they have.
Right.
And you would have to attend to that very quickly, or essentially private insurance collapses within a very short period of time, and that may be what was done by design.
And that would be my next question to you. Isn't that the design, to collapse private insurance so that we get a single payer system, which is the federal government?
Right. It's no longer called the public option. It's called the Federal Exchange, and that is, in fact, written into law.
I'm sorry.
The Federal Exchange.
I still call it the public option.
But it would be a nonprofit federal exchange, and the language for that is actually in the law. And there's been some discussion as to whether or not the Secretary really has the power to do that. But I think she has asserted power in places she doesn't have it already, so there's really little to stop her from doing that.
Isn't that a rose by any other name kind of thing, Congressman?
Yes, a single payer system, exactly right.
And that was what we didn't want all along. That was the thing that we were most fearful of.
Well, you and I didn't want it, but there is a sizable chunk of the left who was disgusted with the president because he did not push for a single-payer system.
Congressman Michael Burgess joining us. The congressman is also a doctor. When we come back, I want to ask you, in your opinion as a doctor, the worst parts of this dog, if it does get through. And there's a new book that you can pick up written by the congressman called Doctor in the House. Obamacare, 2 years down the road. Tell me, as a doctor, the things that you fear most could come to fruition.
Well, we already talked about the possibility of it ending up as a single-payer system, and that does concern me. The lack or the diminution of autonomy of the physician medicine as a profession is really one of the things that troubles me. There is a push even now, before this thing kicks in with full force, for doctors to join hospitals, health plans as employees. I was always in business for myself. My contract was with the patient. Yes, I would satisfy the hospital or the health plan as it was possible, but my primary agreement was with the patient. Now, if you have a doctor who's an employee of the hospital, and I don't mean to imply that there's something necessarily wrong with that arrangement, but it does call into question where does the allegiance lie in that. So there is an erosion of the professionalism, and that troubles me greatly. I will also tell you what wasn't in this bill. Look, you're going to reform healthcare from top to bottom. What are the number one problems that doctors have right now? Well, one of them is the Medicare payment schedule that reduces every year. One of them is the fact that liability outside of Texas, liability problems are very high. And then the other is that we're not allowed to talk to each other. How do you expect us to hold the cost down if we're not able to talk to each other? Doctors are not able to talk to each other over price. So some antitrust relief should have been included in this. We got none of those things. And yet our professional organization, our dear friends at the AMA, and I am an AMA member, and I do believe in their mission, but they really kind of left us in the lurch with this thing. So what was not done in the bill is probably as damaging as some of the stuff that was in the bill. And then the big kahuna is the cost. And when the federal subsidies in the exchange kick in 2014, the drain on the federal treasury is going to be unlike anything we have ever seen, even with Medicare and Medicaid and the unfunded liabilities that exist in those federal programs. The subsidies in the exchange, that's throwing gasoline on a raging fire.
Congressman, I got to tell you, when I hear it from experts like yourself, I've always believed this, but then I hear it from experts like you, and I can see in your face. There is some concern. So our hope is that the Supreme Court does the right thing. We kick out the individual mandate, the severability of the mandate. I hope will just take Obamacare right out of the picture. I thank you for your time. I thank you for the book. Where can we get Doctor in the House? Amazon.com?
Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, WorldNet Daily Books. It's available several sites on the internet, and you can also download it for your Kindle.
Excellent. All right. Say hi to Congressman Culberson for me as well. Congressman Michael Burgess